The interesting thing about this issue, of course, for these two candidates is that both of them have acknowledged the important nature of global warming. Both of them have endorsed a cap and trade system. Some minor differences at the top level. I think Senator Obama has said 80% reductions by 2050. Senator McCain has said 60% reductions by 2050. But since none of us have a clue what's going to happen in 2050, that's really not a huge difference. Start out with you, Dan, and give us in 2 minutes why it is that your candidate's answer is the better answer and your candidate would be the better one to deal with this issue.
Barack Obama has been very clear on his support for action on climate change, has put forward a thoughtful, detailed plan, and has been consistent in his understanding that regulation is needed generally where market failures are a risk. And we have seen in the economic setting over the last week what happens if good regulations are not in place. And I think getting some facts on the table and the Carbon Disclosure Project reports here today help us do that. And you heard bits and pieces of it this morning, but I want to put it front and center. And it's to move to an innovation-oriented approach to environmental protection. And to put innovation at the center means that we're going to really spur on technology development, fresh thinking across the board, not only in goods, but in services. And I think this is where the Obama plan really stands out.
Doug?
First, I would like to just make it very clear to this group that Senator McCain has been, since 2003, a leader in the effort to move climate change legislation through the U.S. Senate and through the Congress in general. One of the differences is, in fact, the auctions. Those auctions in McCain's plan do not start out at 100%, but only ramp up over time. We think the flexibility at the startup, the use of allocations to mitigate the transition costs for those firms that may not be able to pass costs forward, those allocations are a transition tool, and to take them out of the hands of the policy but through 100% auctions is something the Senator is not in favor of doing. I'd say the other major difference that we've seen between the two is simply what is the role of nuclear power in this? Addressing global warming is about innovation and new technologies, but there is one zero-emissions technology that's out there right now that we can take advantage of, and Senator McCain believes we should take advantage of it in an aggressive way.
Dan, what about nuclear power? How can you be serious about global warming and not be serious about nuclear power?
Nuclear power needs to be part of our game plan going forward, part of a diverse energy portfolio, but that we shouldn't torque the choice. We shouldn't have the government picking the winners in terms of our energy future.
I will speak on behalf of the McCain campaign, and I will confess, Dan, I still don't know what you guys believe about nuclear power. I've been on like 9 of these panels. Everybody tells a different story. But here's the way McCain views this. I mean, top-level architecture is the cap and trade. That's the long-run price signal to move away from carbon-based energy sources. Within that, his recognition is that we have a tremendous national security exposure to imported oil, and that we need to stop sending $500 billion a year to people who do not share American values, and in some cases are financing those who would harm us. He favors accelerating research into batteries so that we will, in the end, see people driving on cleaner cars, plug-in hybrids, battery-powered electric vehicles, and that will require comparable efforts in the electricity area and an aggressive use of nuclear power. John McCain thinks that, given that technology is here, given that we know we cannot be financing those who want to harm us, we should drive off nuclear power on our roads. So that's not exactly a free market approach. It's a recognition that we have multiple goals here, and he's pushing it.
And Dan, what's wrong with that approach?
Well, I think what you see is a tactical effort here to suddenly become a new John McCain who thinks regulation is not so bad after a career of attacking regulation left, right, and center. And frankly, you can paint stripes on a cat, but you cannot turn it into a tiger. If he cares about this issue and really is committed to the leadership that Doug is telling us, why in December 2007 did he fail to show up at the Senate for the critical vote on renewable energy incentives? And he tells us now he's not even sure he would vote for that, the Warner-Lieberman bill. Why has he given us a vice presidential choice whose attitude on environment generally is extremely far to the side and whose particular thoughts on climate change leave George Bush looking mainstream? I think we've got a real question here about the depth and seriousness of the commitment, and you've got to ask the question, who is really in a position to drive us to the future? Who is going to move us forward? And one last thought. Doug raised the Lexington project. I happen to be from Concord, Massachusetts. And so I want to tell you what happened on the Lexington Green on the 19th of April in 1775. The Minutemen showed up, the British rolled in, the British fired, and the Minutemen turned and ran until they were regrouping at Concord to really start the revolution. So the Lexington Project is a metaphor for not having a plan and showing up without your chamber loaded.
Let's not get too deep into the Revolutionary War, but
just repeating some history. We've learned what happens if you don't have people.
Well known in Concord, I'm sure.
Don't have people who've done their homework.
How about the specific questions that he raised about Senator McCain's positions?
Well, I mean, look, I admire the talking points, the cynical campaign that's being run that basically is dedicated to the notion that we're going to distort a man's record. I mean,
Are you done?
I'm getting a chance to talk. John McCain's been a leader in this area since 2003. That's indisputable. John McCain has fought for higher CAFE standards in cars. John McCain has proposed regulation of tobacco by the FDA. John McCain has at other times proposed to lessen regulation where he thought that the market was better equipped to take care of it. This cynical attempt to somehow paint him as a ritual deregulator when he has in fact been both for and against regulation, that's the record, and that's all there is to it. I do want to take this opportunity to share with the group that I've briefed and traveled with Governor Palin extensively, and obviously her views on climate change attract a lot of attention. I think the characterization that has been pushed in the media is the extreme characterization that somehow she doesn't believe in this at all, and that's not right. She's committed to supporting the senator's cap and trade policy without equivocation.
Both candidates support the cap and trade.
If you look
system.
at the details, there are some important differences, both in the long-term signal and in the willingness to auction permits, which is really how you make people pay for the harm they're causing. It's a major shift in how we think about environmental protection, where we're going to have people pay for the harm they cause. And that creates the incentive for people who can provide solutions to come into the market. The Carbon Disclosure Project is helping us realize who's digging in, who's taking the issue seriously. And frankly, I'm actually more excited about the capacity of the people in this room and the people on Wall Street to come behind these carbon disclosure analyses and really think about carbon exposure as a factor in which companies are going to make money going forward.